Right. I can tell you that the meeting is going to be recorded. Um, and posted to the YouTube channel at a later time. Something else I want to bring to the board's attention. I've been called away tonight. I have to pick up my minister at the airport at 9:30. And the roads are pretty greasy. So the vice chair has said that he would providing the board approves, he'll take over the meeting for the majority of the meeting. So what we would like to do, we do have a closed session item, which I'd like to be part of. And so when we call for a motion for additional agenda items, I'd like to see that item 10, which is the closed session item, be moved to item 4. And with that, I need a motion. Can I have someone make that motion? Please, Deb and Mike. Anyone opposed? Then that can carry. Thank you for that. We're at item number 3. We'll ask for a motion that the board of directors approve the agenda as amended. So it's Jim, seconded by Shelley. Anyone opposed? And that too is carried. So what we have here, people, is here we go. Another motion here that the Long Point Region Conservation Authority Board of Directors move into closed session to discuss advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege. With that, I'm going to ask the members from Norfolk to vacate from the room. I'm sorry.
Let's enter this. We're gonna enter into closed session.
Oh, enter into closed session. Yes, thank you.
So if you move a second.
Mover and a second for them. Shelley and over Jim. Anyone opposed? Okay, that's carried.
That's an selection. Yeah.
All right, and again, I have to apologize, I have to leave for personal reasons. And I do have a motion here that Vice Chair Doug Brown can be appointed, I think, chair for the remainder of December 3rd, 2025 meeting. Can I have a mover and a second on that, Mr. Columbus, and after Mr. Yafo. Anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much for the consideration, and we'll see you all in a very short time. Yeah. Leave this. Yeah. And it's no mission. This is that's the thing that I show we take over. Okay, I'll turn it for now. The barriers and the agenda is now changed to longer from lines up, but we're on. It will say item 4, but it's actually starts as item 5. It's item 4. So, do we have any conflicts of interest? Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Chair. We need to declare a conflict on item 9. 5. With regard to the Bacchus Architectural and Structural Building Assessment Report. I have a family member who is a co-owner of the firm who was produced.
You're fine.
In order to comments,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here's technically that's our conflict when we got kicked out of rooms on item 10A, which recorded.
I guess we all should be fair. Then we all 4 of us and then you go.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, we're good to move on here. So on minutes of previous meeting, minutes of November 5th, and even more than my nose minutes. The minutes of the LPLP Board of Directors Board meeting held November 5th, 2025 is adopted and circulated.
Moved by Jim, second by. Sorry, Ed. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. The next one is the board of directors budget meeting of November 13th, 2025. The one reads the minutes of the LPRCA board of directors budget meeting of November 13th, 2025 be adopted as circulated. The motion, Council Van Pasten, Columbus. All those in favor? That's carried. Definitely good. Moving on here, notes will say correspondence number 8. And Judy, is there any comment on short notes?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I've included the correspondence that we received based up to Friday morning. We'll continue to get more correspondence, but I think the common theme between the correspondence are all resolutions and comments regarding VRO posting and Bill 68. And the common theme really is that no one's supporting what the government's proposing. So you go through, you can see the different resolutions that, and you will have a resolution to consider later in the agenda.
So any other questions about correspondence? Seeing none, I'll read the motion. That correspondence outlined in the board of directors agenda of December 3rd, 2025 be received as information. Mover, Deborah, Shelley, all those in favor? That is carried. Development application, Leanne.
LPRCA staff have issued 19 permits since our last directors meeting at the beginning of November. And as always, we've provided a description and a location of what the permit was for, and the map is on page 44 of your agenda package. If you have any questions, I can.
Question for Leanne. Seeing none, I'll read the motion. Section 28 resolution approval of permits that the LPRCA board of directors receives the staff approves section 28 regulation. Approved permits report as information. Over. Tom, second by Peter, all those in favor? That is carried. New business. Peter Rodan, Gardner Hill section, and shows presentation, and apologize for your name, sir. Seth Burr will now introduce the representative from Trost Environmental, which will present the Peter Rodan and Gardner Hill set.
Thank you, Chair. For the teacher to dam plus environmental assessment, Montrose Environmental has completed all environmental technical solutions and work required under the Conservation Ontario class assessment process. The preferred alternative to repair dam based on both the technical findings and strong community input. Tonight, Mr. Scott Robertson from Montrose Environmental will provide a brief overview of the study, the alternatives considered, and recommended option, associated cost, and next step. With that, Chair, for you, I would like to invite Mr. Robertson to present the public. Thank you.
So, Scott, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Cypher, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Again, Scott Robertson with Montrose Environmental, part of a study team that also includes TMHC, which is a Harrison consultant, Bethenberg and Associates, which will help with some senior engineering support. We'll just jump to the next slide if we can. This is the Teeterville Class Environmental Assessment, located in Teeterville, Ontario. No surprise there. It's about 10 kilometers northeast of Delhi. It's within the Big Creek watershed. It's about a third of the way down the Big Creek watershed, which itself is 750 square kilometers, discharging to Lake Erie at Port Royal near Long Point. One of the dominant features on the landscape associated with the dam is the reservoir that you see in the middle of the screen there. It is a Teeterville Reservoir, provincially significant wetland, and we'll talk a little bit more about how significant that feature is. Slide some background. There's been a dam at or near this location for roughly 200 years. It's come and gone a number of times. This current version, some of the documentation says it's been in place since 1915. There was a one-line item in the Teeterville Women's Institute historical document that suggests it was destroyed in 1937 as part of a flood and rebuilt thereafter. So it's around 100 years old, regardless. It was originally constructed to help timber transport of the area, but now it doesn't really have a function other than as a recreational facility. It is currently owned and operated by LPRCA, having been purchased by Big Creek Conservation back in the mid-60s. It used to carry Teeterville Road across the top of the dam, but in 1971, that was replaced by the county with the new County Road 25 and Teeterville Road, which is about 15 meters off the street. We'll go to the next slide. Why are we doing the study? The problem and opportunity statement as part of any EA. The dam safety review was completed in 2016 at the behest of LPRCA by AECOM. And it concluded that it was a low hazard classification dam, which meant that if it were to fail, there's not a lot of risk to life and property downstream. There would be environmental degradation as the sediment from the reservoir were released into that trout fishery downstream. But it's a low hazard dam, but it is also doesn't meet provincial and federal standards for stability in its current state. Its factor of safety is less than 1, with some authors suggesting they're surprised it hasn't already failed. So the LPRCA is undertaking the class environmental assessment under the Conservation of Ontario class to address this problem statement while bearing in mind other obligations related to water management, public safety, natural heritage, fish and wildlife, and recreation. So the next slide. Just a quick summary of the Conservation Ontario Class EA process. It really is about 5 steps. The first thing we do is we gather all the information we can to clarify and characterize the environment in which the project exists. And this is not just natural environment, it's a social cultural environment, it's the economic environment, it's a technical regulatory environment. And within each of those, there are multiple criteria. So there's many facets at play. Once we understand the context that the project exists within, we define and evaluate a series of alternative solutions to the problem. We do all of this through a public and stakeholder open, transparent process that includes CLCs, community liaison committees, and public information centers, a website, that sort of thing. So we select a preferred alternative and we document it in an EA report, which is pretty much the state where we are now. See, when we are here, this is that, it's hard to see that flow chart, but that's the EA report. So we're about 95% of the way through the project at this point. So the next slide. So let's start with some characterization and understanding of the project environment. And the first slide here is really everything other than the natural. So we see here from a social cultural, there's a legion, the local legion, which sits on the west side of the reservoir. It provides public access to the reservoir feature for recreational activities from sitting, observing, yoga, through to boating, angling, hunting, etc. It's also important for community events such as the Volunteer Fire Department's annual carpet turkey. On the east side, not directly on the reservoir, 1 street over is Norfolk County's Fire Station number 4. And the center picture on your left, actually, you won't be able to see it, but there's what's called a dry fire hydrant on the dam structure that draws water, that allows the fire department to draw water from the Teeterville Reservoir as an emergency fire water supply source. And it is an important source within the county's overall system. It allows them to maintain their Superior Tanker Shuttle Service accreditation, which has benefits across the county for all taxpayers and on their insurance premiums for fire, for example. Some of the other physical characteristics, the middle shot isn't that attractive, but it's an example of the sediment that's accumulated in the reservoir over these many decades and hundreds of years. It's sort of a dry, mucky area that's filled in. The fact that a reservoir is online has affected that sediment transport of the creek system over the many years. And in the lower right is just an example of a temperature graph. So the reservoir has the effect of warming the water as it comes through. It sits there like a big shallow pool in the summer. Sun heats it up, the air temperature heats it up, which is important because downstream fisheries, as a trout fishery downstream, they prefer the cold water and the dissolved oxygen that can be in cold water. So when it warms it up by 10 degrees, it is a negative impact right now. Quickly on the lower two pictures is just an example of the concrete repair works that need to be done on the piers downstream, and on the middle of the lower is just a mill foundation wall that's just located west of the existing dam. So we'll go next slide. And this is really focused on the natural heritage aspect of it. It's hard to express just how significant this feature is. There's a series of photos here, and I had probably 200 of these. There are 9 species at risk identified in the area, as well as another 9 species of conservation concern, primarily in the bats and birds end of things, which means they don't necessarily need the reservoir. But there are 3 turtles. In the middle there, we have a Blanding's turtle, which is a species at risk, but there also is a northern knot turtle and a snapping turtle, which are species of conservation concern. And it looks maybe subtle, but the trees on the lower right are a butternut and a black ash, both of which are species at risk as well. So we'll go next slide. Thanks. Moving into the alternatives. So we looked at 5 alternatives as part of the study. The do nothing, that seems a little bit nonsensical for those maybe not familiar with the Class EA process, but it is a mandatory alternative that you have to look at within the Class EA process, if only as a baseline for comparison with the do something alternatives, which are the other 4. In the do something, we looked at kind of 2 big buckets. One is retain the dam. So that is alternative 2 and 3, which are either repair the existing one or build an entirely new one, replace it, or take the dam out, which is alternative 4 and 5. And then 4, we would just take the dam out and allow the water course to renaturalize itself through the reservoir. 5, we would take a little bit more of an active engineered hand and build some offline wetlands and wet ponds. So we can go next slide at this point. And then we get into the assessment of these criteria. So we know the context, the environment in which the project exists. We know the types of criteria, the alternatives we're looking at. And now we look at them through the lens of these 4 categories that I mentioned previously: the technical engineering, natural environment, social, cultural, and economic. And within each of those are all kinds of criteria. And the point I'm trying to make with this slide is that it's not just one thing that we're looking at. We in this room might think economics. We in another room might think natural environment. Other people might be more focused on social cultural. So it's really getting that understanding and then getting out to the public and understanding what's important to them. And it's starting to weight what each of these are. And it's evaluated, these alternatives are evaluated over all 25 of these criteria and constraints. So we can go to the next slide. I'm going to quickly run through this slide and the next 2. Then we can maybe cursor back and forth a little bit. These are the dam in options. So you see the reservoir is going to look very much the same as it does now. Because the dam is going to we're either going to do nothing or we're going to replace it or repair it where it sits now. So the reservoir is going to look pretty much the same. The major advantages of the retained dam alternatives is that it maintains the existing standard standing water wetland habitat that's there now and all the species that use it. It retains the county's fire water supply source that I talked about, and it really respects the cultural heritage and aesthetics of the area. Like I said, it's been there 200 years. It is a focal point of the community, and trust me, they think it's very important. The disadvantages are those negative warming impacts, the continued holding of sediment, so it affects the sediment transport as it's supposed to go down the creek. There is a public safety risk associated with a large, open, shallow, silty bottom body of water, and it is an LPRCA liability. There are potential climate change impacts with the shallow water. It's more prone to flood risk with the large floods that are expected to happen. It's going to continue to warm temperatures. And they're, on a long-term operational side of things, those costs are going to continue. There's a cost associated with owning and maintaining that infrastructure over time. So we'll go to the next slide, number 4. So number 4 is where we start to take that dam offline and we see the water course renaturalizing itself through its preferred channel through the middle of this. So if that dam had never been built, this is roughly where the water course would have been. And all of that sediment that's been built up in there, you basically let it turn back into a terrestrial wetland. So it's still going to be mucky, but it's going to have lots of seed bank and fertilizer in there. It's tributary from an agricultural watershed. We've taken some of these off before. They pop up with vegetation very quickly, but it would look very different. And the next slide is alternative 5. So it's basically the same thing, but we've gone in and we've tried to recreate some of that open water habitat with the wet ponds and the wet pockets and wetlands around. The advantages and disadvantages of the remove dam options are pretty much the flip of the retain the dam option. So you remove some of those negative environmental impacts about fish passage and sediment. You remove the negative warming impacts, you reduce the long-term cost, you no longer own a dam. But you do partially or wholly remove the standing water habitat. It would require the replacement of an alternative fire water supply source somewhere else local. And it would negatively impact the public's existing and historic recreational and cultural sort of aesthetics. So just a quick slide on the economics, because I know that's often important to groups such as yourselves. We did look at all 5 options. You don't see alternative 1 here because again, it's kind of a nonsensical and the risks of it failing greatly outweigh doing anything. So really, we're looking at alternatives 2, 3, 4, and 5 here. And what we can see from a capital output, numbers 2, the repair dam, and number 4 are roughly the same, and alternatives 3 and 5 are kind of roughly the same. So just, you can think of it as repairing your car versus replacing your car. You're going to get away a little cheaper out of the gate. But to replace it, to buy a new car, you're going to be more expensive, but you're going to save that money over the longer term through the operating needs. Alternative 4 is cheaper because you're basically pulling a dam offline. In a normal situation like a Victoria, for example, it would even be cheaper than that. A lot of the cost that you're seeing in alternative 4 is the replacing of that fire water supply source. So built into that is the idea that you're going to have to go out and buy a parcel, dig a hole, line it with a PVC liner, create a well, put a pump system, and build a whole new dry hydrant system to replace that, mitigate the impact of taking that dam offline. So that's where 4 becomes a little more expensive than you might intuitively think. So in the next slide. So having watched through the various alternatives and some of the dominant pros and cons of each, this is a really condensed, summarized version of a very large table where we looked at all of those categories and constraints that we talked about earlier. And the 2 main takeaways that I'd love to direct your attention to here are the second column from the left, which is called weighting. So this is where we would have started the project and we would have taken those 4 broad categories of the environment and assigned an equal weighting to each of those. Technical, regulatory, and economics, and everything, they're 25% of the overall sort of sensitivity of the project. What we've done when we've gone through this study is that social, cultural, and natural environment have bubbled up as the predominant sensitive aspects that are both sort of physically and in reality and what the public thinks as well. So it's good that those 2 mesh. So those 2 alone now add up to about 2/3 of the overall score, whereas technical, regulatory, and economics are about 1/3 of the score. The only other thing I'll draw your attention to here is that when you bubble it all out with the red oval there, the repair dam is coming up as the preferred alternative. It's ranked number 1. So we can go next slide. So again, just a couple of advantages and disadvantages of repairing the dam is that it does resolve that problem statement. It fixes the structural stability elements of it. It's the second lowest cost, capital cost alternative. It actually improves the still water habitat. In 2016, when the dam was designated to be unsafe, the CA opted to change its operation, which used to include the putting in of 2 stop logs in the spring, which allowed the head in the pond to be a little bit higher. Because it was deemed unsafe, we didn't want to put that kind of pressure on the dam anymore. So there hasn't been those 2 stop logs back in the dam for the last 10 years. Repairing the dam would allow those logs to go back in. So it would actually make things a little deeper. It would sort of improve that wet habitat. Deepening it also retains and improves the county's emergency fire water supply source there, and it retains the cultural and sort of optical aesthetic that the reservoir resonates with the community. Again, disadvantages, a lot of those ecological impacts remain. It does retain the ongoing costs associated with owning a dam, and it is, when you look at it over the 100-year lifetime cost, which is what we used in the study, it is amongst the highest of the lifetime costs, but those 3 of the 4 are around the same. So we can go next slide. This was not done in absentia. Those of you who maybe received emails over the last 14 months as the project's been going on are well aware. We've had lots of stakeholder consultation, from the LPRCA hosting a project-facing dedicated website that documents everything that we know about the project, to mailouts, to what's called a community liaison committee, which was a dedicated group of local residents and NGOs, study team members, other agencies like the Legion, the fire station were represented. It was a little bit more of a focus group. Then we held 2 public information centers as well, extremely well attended. I would say 90 and 70 at the 2 PICs. For those of you that were involved in the Victoria job 2 years ago, this is probably 4 times what we had in those PICs. So we're very well attended, lots of comments. And what bubbled to the top in talking with the public was that the preference was for a repair dam. So the preferred alternative, even though it's not, it wasn't chosen solely to deal with sort of public output or input. They two mesh, which is where you want to end up as well. So we go next slide. What does it look like? So this is sort of a section from the called east side of the dam. You can see the deteriorating concrete. The approach, there was a detailed design for repairs done in 2019, 2020, and the idea is it's going to be stabilized by literally adding a lot of mass. It's sort of simple, where you're going to put a lot of concrete on that downstream face. You see where water is spilling over the stop line and coming down the near vertical face and then running out that concrete spillway. That whole area will be filled in with a mass of concrete, so water will top over the stop logs and then run along and then fall down the slope that you see on the left-hand side there. So optically from Teeterville Road, it will look very much the same. It'll maintain a lot of the same look that's there now. It'll maintain that the reservoir. It'll allow it to be operated deeper in the summer, that sort of thing. So it's a fairly straightforward approach that's already been designed and already been approached to some extent through the provincial agencies. MNRF will have to approve any design that's done here. But it's already well along, so it's easy from that side. So we can go last slide. So next steps, given approval to complete the report and present the report, we would go to council, now Norfolk County Council next week, just as a report for information. And we would complete the study documentation and file it for what's called a 30-day review. Barring any comments, we would then proceed to a notice of completion. If we did receive significant comments, we would update the report. You might have to post it for another 15-day review, but then you could file a notice of completion and the EA would be finished. So with that, we can go to questions if you want. We'll get through one last slide. There you go. So I'm open for any questions that the board might have, or and I've got staff here who've been involved through the project as well. So.
Okay, thank you, Scott, and we'll open up the questions and we'll start with you.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate all the work you've put into this, Mr. And just had a lot of communication, as you're well aware, because it isn't my ward. And the pond itself, it's close to 40 acres, isn't it? How many acres of wetland are we dealing with here in addition to the pond?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would be guessing that it's at least double. Because there is a lot of that perimeter, more of a terrestrial land as opposed to the standing water. So we can't just look at the standing water and consider that to be the wetland. It's all that peripheral land.
The question I had last week from somebody was, how soon will we see the dam repaired?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's a question that's beyond the scope of the EA study. It will be, I mean, if I'd hesitate to say I don't want to put staff on the spot. Victoria EA was done a year and a half ago, and it's proceeding to an implementation planning now. It might depend on funding, right? Clearly.
So, Norfolk County, we had money in the 10-year forecast, and we do work with Norfolk County Treasury staff. So I think, so it looks like there's money in that we put into the budget. This would be like a special levy now moving with Norfolk County in 2027 for the design. 368,000 for 108, sorry, and then we have 1,380,000 for in the forecast for 2028. So
we're looking at year 2027, 2028.
yeah,
Okay, thank you.
because we're not even finished the union process yet.
Deborah.
Through the chair, I have a question about, you said the fire system depended on this for backup for water. Whose responsibility is that to make sure that that's in place? Is that an LPRCA responsibility? Is it a municipal or is it a shared responsibility?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would gather it's a completely county responsibility. I don't think it's contingent on the LPRCA to maintain water supply sources. There are dozens of these dry hydrants around the county. Most often you see them beside the road. They look very much like an irrigation pond, except they'll have a little sign with a hydrant on it that tells the fire stations where you can pull over and refill your truck. This is a bit of a different animal. The most of them are nowhere near this size or a natural feature to my knowledge. But I can't imagine it's an LPRCA responsibility. But I can say, as someone doing the EA, if you are going to recommend the implementation of a design that has a negative impact, whether it was on a natural feature or local residents, or in this case, on your local municipality, you are obligated to mitigate that impact.
Okay, Chris, I did see your hand.
Chairman, I need more of a comment than a question, but, I think I got a call from, or got contacted by every member of the Legion, every member of the fire department, and half the community over the last summer. And, it's nice to see that the scientific and the research matches what the public opinion is, and, I think that puts us in a strong position to move ahead and just get this done. And I think on the fire department, the county, Norfolk County got to pay for it one way or the other. So it's kind of nice to fit it into this one so that it would add to the cost one way or the other to the county itself, even though it's not part of the dam.
Other question, Robert?
Pretty simplistically, that you take out the dam, the pond is gonna essentially disappear. And if you put the dam in, it's going to actually retain the water. So my question is, look at the effect of upstream from the pond, the headwaters of Big Creek. If you take out the dam, will that make the land drier in the headwaters of Big Creek? And if you build the dam up, will that make the water of the lands more wet in the headwaters? The reason I ask is, in the headwaters of Big Creek, there are thousands of acres of farmland that are drained, municipal drains, tiles into Big Creek. And every year I get the opposite questions. Get rid of that Peterbilt Dam because the water is making our land unfarmable. And we have to pay thousands of dollars on municipal drains to get rid of the water, which is being held up. That's the headwater scenario. I'm just wondering if the environmental assessment looked at anything of that.
Mr. Chair, I can say, we did peripherally, not in that way. What we did look at, because of some of the local residents, a lot of them are on shallow sandpoint wells around the reservoir. And one of the concerns that was raised is, if you lower the dam level, if you lower the reservoir, what's that going to do to our wells? Because you can imagine that water level has been held up there for plus or minus 2 centuries. So when they built the house, they only put the well down as deep as they needed to go to get to the water. We could argue whether or not that's a safe water supply or not. That's pretty close to the surface, but I also know a lot of the county is on. At any rate, our hydrogeologists looked at it and they said, if you drop that reservoir by even 2 or 3 meters, because you're on a sand plane, the cone of influence of the groundwater doesn't extend more than about 100 meters. So he was doing it from a perspective of, no, you're not really going to have a negative effect on these wells. To your question, no. That the effect of that dam does not proceed. I wouldn't even say it goes up to the next concession level.
And that's what I wanted to hear, Travis. And again, in the headwaters, most of the wells there are sand points. And if you got rid of the dam, the thinking is that the water disappears and you're kind of lose your well. So it's just what I hear different from the people around here.
I would suggest you're going to have way more fluctuation in the groundwater table and the ability to farm a particular piece of land based on a seasonal drought condition versus a wet condition. You get into a wet winter, it's going to be wet through the spring.
Yeah, actually, a lot of the municipal drains went dry up in my area this last summer, and the Teeterville Dam was just a great place to fish.
Right. It has been raised, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, it has been raised as one of the potential climate change benefits of retaining a dam here. Is that if the prognosticators are saying you're gonna get into more extreme weather events, whether it's an extreme flood or an extreme drought. What it does, if we were to get into an extreme drought, it does provide a possible source of emergency irrigation water supply for the local agricultural community. By retaining it.
Okay, Jim, I have you next. If that's, are you done, Robert? Sorry. Jim, you're next, you're Peter.
Thank you. One question is adding 2 stop logs to the dam. How is it going to affect the pond size?
Relative, through you, Chair, relatively marginally, it's 2 stop logs is about 40 centimeters. So it would extend in a little bit further into that terrestrial wetland area that we were talking about around the perimeter, but it would have been that way in 2015. And I don't recall people seeing much of a difference, really. It would extend for whatever 40 centimeters deeper. It all depends on the slope of the land. Okay. But I don't think you'd see any change. There's enough perimeter wetland vegetation that you can see around there that it wouldn't affect farm fields or anything like that. It might extend just a little further into that vegetation. It's just affecting.
Okay, Peter. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
In the number 2, you talked about placing a large amount of concrete on the discharge side of the dam. So is the rest of the dam structure in good enough condition that it's going to be okay?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are some other elements of the repair dam alternative. I touched on that as the main focus. You saw some of the piers with the concrete stair. There are areas of cracking and exposed rebar that would need to be repaired. Underneath the spillway, it's been sitting like that for decades. There's been an erosion pool happen underneath the spillway, so that all has to be backfilled with some grout as well. The other thing that will go along with it, there used to be a steel truss bridge that had some heritage aspects to it, but it became a safety hazard and was removed in 2022. So the LPRC has not had the opportunity or the ability to operate the dam since 2022, pull a log in or out, because you do it from that steel truss structure on top. So the other thing that would be included in the repair dam alternative would be a reinstatement of the operating platform that gives staff the ability to get in there and pull stop logs in or out. But in conjunction with that, there used to be a pedestrian walkway bridge across it as well, that allowed the public to sort of engage with the structure. And I would expect that you would build something like that back into it. It's not necessary from a repair dam perspective per se, but they do love their dam and they want to engage with it. So I'd leave that up to you as to whether or not, if you're building a steel truss, a steel, access platform anyway, it's not that much of a stretch to add a pedestrian bridge to it, but then you are encouraging people to interact with the dam, which is always a safety issue. There's graffiti painted under the County Road 25 bridge, so people are engaging in the area, and it does represent a liability. So a lot of CAs, province, Hydro One, those they will actually do everything they can to fence people off of the dam structures.
Okay, any other questions? I had a couple if I may, Scott. I noticed, and I apologize, we did take a tour last year of this dam, if I remember right. And there's no gate in this dam, is there? Or is there?
Through Mr. No gate.
No gate, so it's just the spillway that controls everything.
Just there's a concrete sill, and on top of that, there are a number of stopwatch, right? So you drop it down. So one of the additional elements that we recommend, it's certainly not necessary to repair it, but if you're in there anyway, and it's still just a concrete vertical wall, more or less, you could put in a low flow sluice down near the bottom that would give you some operational capacity to if you ever wanted to drain the reservoirs every now and again, flush out sediment from in front of the downstream face, which would clear up that intake that the county's fire water supply uses. It just gives you a little more operational flexibility. So you would literally cut a hole in the dam and maintain that hole through the new concrete structure, put a valve in, and then it would just give you some operational flexibility, like what you have in many of your other smaller cities.
Through the chair, we have that at the Lincoln Dam.
Right. I operated the dam for years in Simcoe, and we had a gate and we spent a lot of money.
Right.
Get it around. But anyways, the other question I have, on this, and Julie, if you can correct it, did we not look at the property all upstream? The deeds, didn't the deeds go to the water's edge or as it exists, or did we look at that?
So we did engage with Kim Hudson
Right,
and we're getting the property survey, but it isn't complete. It's near completion, but I haven't got the final property lines.
okay, so when I assume a lot of those deeds are very old and they're, but he'll show us all that, I think.
Yes, he had a lot of information and he was able to pull a lot of historic information and there's been a lot of information gone into determining the original reservoir lines.
And, if I made the last, the stowaway is, it's kind of floating there, was it not?
Yes.
Okay,
Floating, I mean, there's a void underneath it, so yeah, it doesn't have a lot of support.
yeah, I remember that, I toured it, so, okay, well, thank you, any other questions, anybody? No questions, okay, thank you, Scott. All right, I have some motions here, yes, regarding the G Road Dam. Read them off and then go from there, how's that? Okay. Cypher, you want to speak on this first?
Thank you, Chair. To you, Chair, staff have prepared Teeter Hill Dam Conservation Ontario. Plus, updating and we have the report as information. Staff is looking for board direction to complete publish the environmental final environmental assessment report in accordance with the Class A process and the board's direction for staff to proceed next steps, including the presentation to Norfolk County Council. As I said, you have the report, and if you have any question, ask that. So,
Any questions?
Chair, I was on, have reports on page 66 of the agenda. Was you were looking for the board to endorse number 2, and then December 9th, Scott T. Cruiser and staff for information.
Go ahead, Dean.
Is there any estimation either by this board or by Norfolk County as to what the apportionment would be of the costs, LPRCA versus Norfolk County?
Gee,
So the repair and the engineering work required to do the repair would be 100% Norfolk County. If there was any funding available, we would apply. WACI funding, which is through the Ministry of Natural Resources, conservation utilities can apply. So we've done that in the past where there's been repairs to certain things on the water structures. And we've been successful, so if there's opportunity to apply for WACI funding, we would, but otherwise it's 100% on to Norfolk County.
thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'm ready to read motions now and go, okay, so I got 3 of them here, and I'm gonna read them off, open it up again. That the LPRCA Board of Directors receives the Teeterville Dam Class Environmental Assessment Update as information. And that the LPRCA Board of Directors endorses alternative number 2 to be the preferred option as presented by Montrose Environmental. And 3, that the LPRCA Board of Directors supports Montrose Environmental to present a deputation to Norfolk County Council. And that's all 3. Any questions, Chris?
Be happy to move it.
Okay, moved by Chris, seconded Mike. So
What happens, I've been waiting for 10 years.
seconds.
Switch that.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, seeing none, that's carried. That's very good. Thank you, Scott. Thanks, Charlie. Okay, next we have on the agenda, the general manager's report, Judy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just provided some information for things that happened in November. The one thing, we did apply for funding for 170,000 to the, it's a long title here, it's the Environment and Climate Change Canada's Habitat Stewardship Program for species at risk. So that would be over 4 years, so we're hoping that was successful because it's going to be funds to control hemlock woolly, bush on our lands, and also the Fragmite at Lee Ground Marsh. We also have just, we're working on 2 more applications related to invasive species. Forestry has completed an application to ask for just around 28,000, another fund opened up the invasive species fund for control of invasives. So we're doing that, and Paul Gagnon was also applying for additional funding to support the threat control of the burn. So we're trying to get as much funding as we can continue over our lands to control that. So other than that, we've been really busy just working on Bill 60 and the around and trying to keep up with all the information that comes in daily.
That's it. Any questions, Judy? Seeing none, this motion, it says that the LPRC Board of Directors receives the general manager's report of November 2025 and information. Mover Deborah, second by Tom. Okay. And all of sorry. Motion carried. All that in favor? Carried. Thank you. And that's very good. Okay, next we have the provincial and the 68 schedule 30 proposed change to the CA Act and the ERA notice 025-1257. Judy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there's a lot of information. We attached a lot of supplemental information to the report so that we wanted to do a deeper dive into each of them for you. So really today, for the board, we have drafted a motion that the board can consider, and we can go through it to what the board wants. We did put together a presentation just so that we could walk you through this. Maybe it will help spur some discussion, and then we can, as a group, decide on how we want to respond to we as a group. The ERO posting was due, like the comments are due by December 22nd. So tonight, really, it's just coming. I wanted to see how the board wanted to respond to like the overall Bill 68 and the forming of the agency, etc. We will also then compile a response to the ERO. That's on the package tonight because I wanted to have this with discussion with the board first, and then we'll draft that. And then we'll decide if we can either if we can circulate it by email or if we need a special meeting. That's something that the chair and myself will discuss and then reach out to everybody. But so tonight it's really just sort of refreshing one's memory and just going through the different information and getting into motion that we can circulate in municipalities and different partners. So on the first slide, and then we also have the slide in your desk because sometimes it just easier to see. So the provincial announcement timeline really started October 31st. Then November 6th and 7th, we've heard of the Bill 68 and the ERO increase looking up the next day, the 7th. Then just about the boundaries for the 7 refill CAs. November 12th, there was a Conservation Ontario meeting, and we had on the 18th the NECP information session that I attended. It was virtual, and the chair and vice chair also attended. So then they're also saying that by the spring of 2026, there's gonna be additional legislative and regulatory changes. Just so that you know, also, Bill 68 did receive royal assent on November 27th. So the legislation went through to actually form the agency or conservation authorities. So that's called the Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency. So that has been approved on November 27th. So why the change in the ERO? They explain it, we quoted what they said there, that the current system of 36 CAs is fragmented with each CA following different policy standards, fees, and levels of staffing and technical capabilities. This has led to unpredictable and inconsistent turnaround times for approvals across all conservation authorities, creating uncertainty and delays for builders, landowners, farmers seeking permits, and undermining conservation authorities' ability to protect communities from floods and natural hazards. So that's right from the ERO posting. So some of the objectives of the new agency that we're forming, they said it's going to oversee the consolidation of CAs into regional CAs. And currently ERO is looking at 7 regional CAs down from 36 CAs. Oversee the governance and operation, advise the government, promote consistent policies, standards, and fees, evaluate financial performance, guide and evaluate strategic planning to align with provincial objectives, support development of standardized and centralized permitting systems, lead development of digital strategies and shared services, support strategic investment, including leveraging funding. So the governance would be 5 to 12 members appointed by the Lieutenant Governor and Council. You have to have experience in public administration, experience in CA programming, and it can't be a NP. The terms are 3 years up to a maximum of 9 years, so 3 years. 3 years are 3-year terms. And they have to, there's going to be minimum 4 times annually. They're going to issue direction to CAs on the KPIs, the service standards, procurement, training of members and employees, budgeting, AMPs, which is asset management plans, and strategic plans. All direction must be approved first by the minister. So it's going to be a lot of bureaucracy. It sounds like the OPCA staffing and funding. The CEO who will be appointed is under the board supervision. Will follow provincial agencies and appointment direction, including annual letter of direction. The minister can issue mandatory directives to the agency. They must provide the minister with a copy of any CA directive they want to send out 45 days prior to issuing. Ministry may provide funding. They can. So this new agency can charge fees and they will apportion costs to the CAs that are formed. So just to, I think everyone has seen these maps, but on the next slide is on the left is the current CA map and how it's structured and how it was done by the watershed boundaries. The middle map is the 7 regional watershed-based CAs. Which they say will help reduce overlap in administrative duties. And then on the right is the just showing kind of in the pinky purple, the Lake Erie Regional City, which would be where you would fit. And that would include 81 municipalities. Food would be moving from 8 municipalities to 81, and there'd be some board of some structures trying to oversee this massive like Chris said in his article, small European country. So the next slide is really just showing the kind of the framework, the existing versus the proposed. Right now we have M&R and we have ABCP. We have the 36 CAs, the 317 member municipalities. And then we also have sort of the umbrella, right? Organization, Conservation Ontario, that oversees and does a lot of that government lobbying things. coordinating things for the CAs. So proposed is, still we'll have MNR, MECP, we'll have a chief conservation officer, we'll have a agency board. We'll have staff on the, working for that organization, and then there's the 7 CAs. So, the problem is municipalities really have no guaranteed representation on either the OPCA or, really it's unclear how representation will be established on the regional CAs, and they've admitted that they don't really know how this will come together, but there's experts, they say that will they'll figure out merger and acquisitions work, so they'll just hire them. So the consultation, so we've got the ERA posting on the boundaries, which closes for December 22nd. We've had municipal and city information sessions, which was on November 18th. We had a Teams meeting with MPP Bobby and Zee, myself, the chair and the vice chair. That was on November 27th, and Doug, I don't know if you maybe want to speak to what Bobby Ann had to say. Or you want?
I'll just give you a great conversation with her. She did support Bill 68, but she did not, I would say she's behind us if we want anything changed. But she did support Bill 68 when it came before the legislature. Other than that, I think she's prepared to do whatever we request her to do. I think Judy, that's the impression she gave us at our meeting. What day was that? Friday?
Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah.
That's a little bit.
So the next point is the Dave Bears, the chair. He was interviewed by staff member at AMO, and they're going out to interview every chair of the conservation authorities, and they're putting together a response to the Bill 68 and for the ERO. So on December 12th, there's been these regional roundtables announced, and I reached out and they said that municipalities were also being sent directly invitations. So I just wanted to sort of see around the table if we're going to have some other people attending December 12th. I've registered, Chair Bears has registered, but as a deputy mayor for Tilsonburg, and the invitations came out and you could take 2 people. They're limiting each invitation, I think, to 2 people. So we had Norfolk County, vice chair said that there's going to be a planner attend, staff member, and then there's still one open spot for one of the reps here that represent Norfolk County if you were interested in attending on the December 12th. And that's all I know, so I'm not sure if the other municipalities have received those invitations and are planning to attend.
I can speak to Halton County. We're sending a planner, and I was going to attend when we have to.
And did you receive anything?
Well, yeah, I'm just looking at it. Haven't decided yet, but probably.
Okay. Jan? Peter, did you hear?
We got the invitation. We have reps at Southwest Oxford for Upper Thames, Catfish Creek and Long Point. I'm not able to go, but I'm hoping one of the other 2 at least would be able to.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Jim, have you heard about it?
I think I heard about it, when I have a meeting, capital meeting, on
On December
12th.
Robert, have you heard about it?
In the dark.
Did it?
The RCA is the big thing in Grant County, Long Point, just because it's flyer.
So it sounds like probably gonna have some good representation at the meeting. They've had one session in Vaughan already, and they Angela Coleman did circulate the questions that they use for the breakout sessions. I can circulate that to the board members, so. I don't know if they change them every session, the next session is December 5th in Ottawa. And then ours is December 12th, so. But I would assume that they would have to use pretty standard questions to go to the same location, so I can share those questions with everyone. So that's good. So the next point is, Bobby Ann did, Carol Bears asked if she thought that Roma would be a good vehicle to kind of engage with some of the ministers and voice their concerns about all they'll succeed and the consolidation. So she thought it was a very good place. So I think we're probably going to have some representation. I think some people go from the municipalities. Chair Bears will be attending. Doug Breton, Vice Chair, has indicated he would like to attend Roma. And the board supported that. And I just wanted to open it up to the board for some discussion to see if we should send someone or.
Public Township, Cody. I'm attending that meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that something you would be attending?
I'm going.
And Shelley, everyone, have you Caroline? Jim's going and I don't know, Paul Roberts going, okay. And then from Norfolk County, I think it's the CAO I was going and the mayor and deputy mayor. So that's right.
I'm not sure when the time frame is for asking for delegations, but it's over.
So, yeah, it is over. And Bobby Ann said that she would, if we decide that we're gonna try to do our own delegation, that she would try to help to get a meeting, do whatever she could behind the scenes with the contacts that she has with the ministry. No guarantees, so it might be if Doug went, it might be he's been told that he could attend with Norfolk County. So he might have an opportunity to do a short ask.
Yeah, that's now they have a meeting arranged with the minister already for other issues. And the way he indicated to me is we could possibly sit, we could sit in on that meeting, possibly with the minister, give it our 2 cents worth, if I could use those words, but I think it'd be more important if Bobby Ann can arrange a separate meeting for us, really. And I'm not, like right now, our stuff, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris or Mike, but our mayor, deputy mayor, and I think one other person will be going, but there's nothing to do. There's nobody here on our committee from Norfolk. Myself, if I go, and the rest of us, they're all non-LPRCA members.
So that's something that we can consider. So also on the same page is the Euro questions. Like I said, with the opening, we'll be drafting a submission. I don't have it ready for tonight, but there will be something formally that the board will have input in on. So on the next slide, the CA municipal information section. So I think everyone can agree that this money will have to be determined through the consultation. There's other templates that exist right now that's going on with the different consolidations. They suggested they would just get expert guidance and access to consultants will be provided through the agency to help guide this process. All local assets of all the CAs would become the assets of the new RCA. Province is not dictating this. We had to listen closely about the RCA boards. So the regional boards would be in control of the transition, the timeline and the structure. And also determine local presence and offices. The direction to the CAs will commence as soon as the agency is established to ensure smooth transition. Agency will establish standard KPIs and deep type prevention funding. So, you know, we have, I won't go into the details here, there has been changes over the years and you guys have seen and heard it through the packages. We, you know, they say that we're Franklin, we all have different regulations, but there are a few different flight standards for Cs, but that we regulate too, but that's all given to us by the ministry. So we regulate the 100-year flight standard. The provincial guidance on a uniform standard would provide consistency, but it's not effective in managing each unique watershed. And there's really, you need to have that watershed presence and be able to regulate based on what the features are in that watershed. So the next slide is just showing, this was pulled from Conservation Ontario in a report, just showing that 96% of all permits issued, because there's so many, you know, were a barrier because of building and the speed, and but 96% of the permits were issued within the province, which were lines or no that were set with the province. 22% major permits, 70% minor permits. This is all the CAs, all 36. So there's pretty good stats. So the majority of provincial concerns can be addressed. This is my opinion, is without consolidating to 7 regions. I think we would be willing to work with the agency and the ministry. Standardized policies, technical guides, and e-permitting services can cost effectively be implemented with provincial guidance in the current existing CA framework. Governance models need to have representation from all member municipalities. Lack of local CA presence will erode local partnerships and communication. The governance of proposed regional CAs need to be carefully evaluated to ensure that rural municipalities have fair representation. Local offices are recommended. Regionalization may have unintended consequences, creating more bureaucracy and decrease effective communication between the CAs, municipalities, and the stakeholders. And I think we talked about this before, donation of land, stewardship, and employment opportunities are dependent on the local connection. We hire 50 seasonal staff and employ 22 full-time staff in the local community. And, you know, we contribute significantly to the local watershed economy with all the activities and business that's run through the CA. So what needs to stay in a proposed consolidation, local offices and staffing, local decisions through the local representation, and continuation of the local programs and services. So the last slide is the motion, but the motion is also on page, it's a chapter 175, page 70. So it's chapter on the page. I don't know, you know something, actually, you might still be doing page 77.
Me too. Yeah, oh, but I just have the wrong one. So I'm just gonna
So anyway, this is a motion, and I think you see in the correspondence, a lot of municipalities, a lot of councils are have put information out. Recently, we just received one from Windsor, which they took a different stand. They actually are rejecting the whole Bill 68 Schedule 3, and they're asking for the changes, any changes in the CA Act to be in a standalone bill. So that's the most radical one that I've seen, is that they're basically just stop, pause, redo. People need their say, needs to go to committee, needs to go for consultation. So that's that. The our motion under the fifth paragraph, therefore be it resolved that this was written to engage, like we said, Further evaluate proposed boundaries and engage directly with affected municipalities and conservation authorities to establish a reduced geographical scope of consolidation that better reflects, established relationships, etc. There's been some people or some motions come out to say, just leave it as is. And this one is sort of like more middle of the road, because meeting with the other CAs, there's a feeling that something's gonna happen. So it's been a lot of discussion at the board level that maybe it's better to have some form of consolidation or more consultation instead of just saying flat out, no, leave us alone. But that's really for the board to decide, whatever you guys want, build a script and send it off, so. Over to you, Mr. Chair.
Well, the only comment I would make, and if you remember at our last board meeting, I was concerned about all the lending that could take place with our reserves and any kind of finances we make a good revenue from. But on Tuesday past, Judy, when we had the Zoom meeting or whatever it was, and I didn't ask the question, but somebody else asked the question. Reserves, and I'm not sure who the gentleman was that answered it, but it was basically, oh, don't worry about it, we'll take care of it. So, and that's the problem I see. That we have too much to lose, sort of thing.
Chairman, I think I heard about this a little bit the other day, and one of our company the other day. I think the process that they're taking and questions they want answered on the environmental thing, that's only answers to what they want to hear, and if they change that conversation. And I think I mentioned a few times, maybe that concept of getting one electronic portal across the province so that people can apply for these permits and everybody, all the 36 conservation authorities are interpreting those rules the same way and give us some guidance on how to do that. Maybe let's start on that. That's probably a good thing. But the rest of it, if nothing else, it just needs a lot more time, a lot more discussion before we get there. There's just no way that can be in place on January 1st, 2027. And I think the resolution here is sort of pushing at that, maybe different than Windsor, but I think there's probably, like, again, I've been before, we were in discussion back in the late 90s about merging with Catfishing Kettle as part of LPRCA, that the three of us would merge. Maybe that's still a good idea. There's a couple of small things. We have basically the same geography, we have the same problems, but it should be at the grassroots level that happens, not by some bureaucrat in Queen Park who just dictates that they look at the line on the map. They probably don't know how to get there from Toronto, but they think they can draw a line like that. So I think that's what we should be pushing is slow down the process. Let's start with the technical stuff and go from there. Because I think I've heard about it too, both with our staff here and with the county, that from the planning department, the boots on the ground are very important, and it's rather hard to do when you've got a 6-hour drive to get from where you are in an office to where you want to go look at a little problem with a creek. So geography is an issue. So let's see if we can change the conversation, spend more time getting some more input. And that concept of having them presented as a bill rather than changes to the regulations is a sneaky way to get that more time, because it has to go through 3 readings, public hearings and all of that. So I'm sorry, I didn't think of that one. But again, I think we need to push to slow down this process and get it right rather than get it done quick.
Right. So the big question to me is, where are the efficiencies? When are we going to see a cost benefit analysis of this whole program? Compared to what we're doing now, what is the economic impact? Going with the new proposed system, what is the economics to?
I guess that question could be asked at but
I think it's gotta be answered before that.
no, but I'd like to be able to get your answer. You're very good, trust me. I'm serious. So,
Thank you, through the chair. I have severe concerns about this, having just gone through a transition going to the Grand Area Public Health. You are right, cost analysis is important, and they're gonna say, well, we're gonna pay for the first 3 years, but what happens? What happens when the money dries up from the province? So I would ask the question, what happens when the money dries up from the province? Who's responsible? The housing minister spoke about our building code and having like one building code across Ontario, and that's a minimum standard building code. He spoke about that last week. So is that what we're going to have across our conservation authorities, one minimum standard? And that's, that'll affect our area significantly because we have a lot of shoreline issues here that other areas don't have. So are they gonna just paint us with one brush? Lots of concerns here.
thank you. I believe Bill 17 says building code is the building code, there is no additions. No minimum standard, this is it. Used to be able to do it, we can't anymore. Judy, thank you for bringing this forward. Last time we met as a board, I know it's probably shell shocked or something, but you were reticent to bring anything forward outlining the concerns that the authority has. This report embodies a lot of those concerns. You had to think on it, bring it forward, so thank you. There's a lot of questions still unanswered here. The legislation that you included in the package, wow. It talks about, it's a little conflicting on one hand, it talks about we're not going to interfere with your policies, and yet policies are what's giving us the grief across the province. Really? I've had conversations with Minister Flack as well, and I say, well, there's a few problem children out there, but we'll then deal with them. But this, I'm not sure is the right solution. I'd like the language in it that goes or prescribes, as Chris says, slow it down. Let's give it some more thought. I'm not sure, Chris, if you're really advocating for put the brakes right on, or you were speaking in favor of the motion. I was a little confused yet, but I think you're probably going to support the motion as it is.
Keep them talking first.
Keep them talking, absolutely.
By talking to them, they can implement what they say.
I was going to anyway. Yes, but you're right. Mr. Chair, if you get up to Roma, corner them in a hallway. You don't have to have a meeting. Just corner them in a hallway, corner them in the bar, corner them wherever you can. Have a conversation. In the bathroom. Absolutely. Met Joe Clark in the bathroom once, But the point being, whenever you get an opportunity, yes, have that conversation. Talk the brakes in. And maybe there's some good ideas. Yes, back in the early 2000s, the talk about amalgamating with our 3 or 2 sister authorities right next door. Didn't go very well. But maybe that's something that needs to continue. It wasn't that long ago when Otter Creek and Big Creek, thank you very much. Yeah, all right, it was a little while. But the point is, maybe it's time. But this is what they're proposing is one hell of an elephant. And I don't think it's one we want to ride. So I support what you got here, Judy. Thank you. Peter.
Having reps at Southwest Oxford on 3 different boards, 3 different authorities, we have one of our neighboring authorities who is not of the same mindset when it comes to development applications. And I've always so very much appreciated our staff's approach here, where it's very similar to what we apply in Southwest Oxford, that as long as it meets the criteria that's as set forth in regulation, let's get it done. Let's do what we can in order to help along. So I understand from the province's standpoint that they want to get to that place with some of these other CAs that are maybe not quite as progressive in their thinking. At the same time, I think that can be accomplished without creating a behemoth of a landmass. The chances of getting a decision right, assuming that the regional board would be for instance, let's say in London, the chance of them understanding the nuances of Hastings Road in Long Point is very slim. Chances are the majority of them, a representative from Essex is not going to drive up to Long Point to understand what's going on there. So I don't see how you can get better decision making with this kind of a massive area. I personally would like to see the language in the motion more restrictive, more rejecting the concept of the regional boards. And a little more firm in its tone that we can achieve, that we with the new, what's the proper word, the directional? Would a board like that in order to achieve efficiency, in order to achieve standardized service levels, the OPCA. But that the idea of a regional board is just not good decision making. I'm not going to support good decision making.
Okay, Tom, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this pattern is pretty clear. In several areas, this government basically wants to have every decision made in Toronto. They are eliminating local boards, local controls, local representation, because they want to control two things: the purse strings and the future, in conservation authority terms, future development applications. There are some very big developers waiting in the wings for all of this to take place so that Mr. Ford can say, okay, we've got it organized now, go ahead. Local control is also going on. In education, they are eliminating school boards, so there will be no local representation. All be done by, again, regional education offices. This is a pattern that this government is clearly set on, and I'm just hoping that Board Member Van Passen is correct, that if we can keep talking, maybe slow them down a bit, that there will be a public outcry, that they'll reconsider some of this, but we are definitely up against it.
Okay, my two cents were, the resolution I supported, it probably doesn't go as far as we want to, but the information you send along with the resolution to the minister is what's important. They don't really read the resolution, they'll read the accompanying material, and you've done a good job with the analysis here, so that should be forwarded with the comments to the, whatever they call that thing. But so I think we pass the resolution, we circulate the municipalities with the list, or within the list here that you have with the resolution, but we also provide information to the minister with a whole bunch of information that we can show that Long Point at least is doing it right, and we don't want to have our policies affected in the adverse way because we're doing it right. So I think the important thing is to provide the information from Long Point that shows what we're doing. Say it for the job.
Through the chair, so we do have a letter drafted that Dave will be back in the office tomorrow to review with myself that would want to top of the motion. And I think we've heard a lot of the comments. We can also build that into the formal response for the ERO, and also maybe beat the letter up that was in the municipalities, and which will also go to all the ministers and ministries that are listed. So we can take a look at that, maybe add a little bit more in that, and then include the resolution.
I just want to make another comment. First of all, our geographic area takes 6 hours to go from one side to the other. The Northern Superior, or whatever they call it, you can't drive to Thunder Bay and back in one day from Stratford, and that's the the geographic area they're dealing. It's closer to drive to Fredericton than it is to Thunder Bay from my place. So that just
Think about that.
yeah, think about that. And think about going to a meeting in Fredericton, talking about conservation in Lake Erie, it's just boggles the mind, so. We think Dundalk to Elsik is a long way, but Thunder Bay to Stratford is a lot longer.
Well, I was in Michigan, Greensboro, and, once you get on the other side of one, it's Chatham, municipal drain, and windows. I didn't see any bush lots or anything down that way, you know, so I look at it like, we have a lot to lose here. We got the Sparks, we got Bacchus, we got a beautiful area, and, I am concerned because, if it's just, don't worry about it, well, I am.
Well, what we don't have is a sleeping giant in Thunder Bay that they have there and they're very proud of. So, don't even know what that is. And I know that people at Stratford aren't gonna drive to Thunder Bay to go to a meeting. It'll be virtual for sure.
Well, if they're major, if you look at, they don't even know what their committee is, it says 5 to 12 members, like, that's a big difference. Anyways, so, I think, it's very sorry, Jim.
There we go. My ward, I think he has a larger group of port friends like him, but he's very concerned that all the authorities shouldn't put any money into their 2026 budgets. That might be taken away. Because these people are, they're greedy. It's kind of people who are just doing what, but unfortunately, they were elected.
Ask that question of internet. Get some projects ready. Anyway, Mike, sorry.
Right, maybe we should have an organization called Friends of the LPRCA. But since this issue came to head, I've often wondered, what do other jurisdictions in the world, say the state of Oregon or Michigan, they've all got building going on, permits and stuff. How do they handle these types of things? What's their structure? It'd be good to know what they do, say in Australia or New Zealand, and how they handle these types of resource issues. Do you ever think about that, Judy?
Yeah. All the time, but like. Like exhausted reading all this. That was mentioned before. By Robert, what are some other models? Yeah, I don't know if that would help our case, but there are different models up there, obviously. Even in Canada, so. But I know there's also been provinces that don't have CAs that go to Ontario. And they want to implement similar structures because to deal with flooding effectively, so. I think the model, probably is a good model, the CAs. Especially when you have flooding and immersion. But I think I heard that a lot of the things that they achieve can be achieved in the joint structure. We'll make sure that we emphasize that.
Robert,
Just one more comment, and maybe some people remember this, but a few years back in government stock, there was a push to have watershed planning. And rather than municipal planning, have watershed-based planning, which was a whole different concept, which is just a complete opposite of what they're doing now. So maybe the watershed planning is a model that we should be looking at.
okay, are there any other, I guess, comments or questions of Judy that we need to deal with?
From one of your comments, if I read all these correctly, they're gonna update the regs again in March or April. According to the plan, and from past history or past periods, that would be the time that they're gonna change the regs that none of the 36 conservation authorities are allowed to sell properties known as capital projects. That's where they're gonna start putting the brakes on already. So, now would be the timing to get them to slow that process down before they get carried away. And I think that would, that's always like any, when they went through the amalgamation of municipalities 25 years ago, that's what happened. A year ahead of time, all of a sudden they just, as of today, no one spending, they already have control of your money, and your their money. That would be one of my other major concerns, why we have to get to them early.
Okay. All right, Judy. Nothing? No. Let's get the motions out of the way here first, huh? Okay. Get the goggles on. All right, we have, provincial announcements, bills, schemes, schedule, agree proposed changes to the CA Act and ERO notice 0251257 that Judy has presented, and the motion reads as follows: that the LPRCA Board of Directors receives the report as information and approves the motion attachment 1 in response to the seasonal notice 025-1257. That's it, right? Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does the board want the full attached motion read out?
No. See that? Okay. And the chair's gonna secondary. Sorry?
So only the chair's gonna read it.
No, I'm not. Okay, sorry, moved by Chris. Second, need a second, Shelley. Okay, all those in favor, all those none, that's carried. Okay. Now,
Mr. Chair,
there's fair.
it's funny, we also need to give direction to staff to send content to the TROs. Into that.
Maybe. I'm gonna do that, so.
Yeah, you want to vote direction from the board to do it, or? Some.
Mr. Chairman, it's probably not necessary, but if you formalize it and shows the board's support behind the general manager proceeding in that direction, why not? I'll second it. Okay, I'll move it. Second.
Then, second by Chris. Everybody understand that? All those in favor? That's carried. With that, okay. Do we need anything else on that?
I think if we are gonna send some things to Roma. To conference, we probably should have a motion on that.
No, for the motion, just to, it would be that the LPRCA Board of Directors sends one board delegate and one staff delegate from LPRCA to the Roma Conference, January 18th to 20th, to represent LPRCA.
Thank you, Nicole.
Sound good?
Okay. Okay, very clear in that, and it was moved by, sorry, Shelley, and second by Tom. Okay, no further questions, all those in favor? That's carried. There. All right, are we done with that, Judy, or is there anything else you need on that? Oh, well, my, as far as we Friday in London. We need one of the, remember between Norfolk, like.
Oh, right, that was gonna be discussed, so.
Cause I'm going with LPRCA. And you're
With me.
with you, and we can have one other Norfolk member attend. Do you want us to work it out after, because Leanne, not Leanne,
Trish.
Trish. planners going from Norfolk. They made that decision this morning, as soon as that. Alicia called them, so she's the planner that's going, so we can send one of her members from Norfolk. Correct. Do you want to work that out amongst us later on, for sure, folks?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that. All right, we're moving on to staff appreciation for everybody to.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is, been a practice that the board, supports, going gift certificates for staff for Christmas, and they've been, $50 since 2021. They want to increase it from 25 to 50. And the total cost associated with this would be approximately $1,600 for staff that are on. At the time.
Questions from the committee? No commission, no pay. Here we go. That the LPRC board of directors authorize the general manager to give times for staff appreciation for their efforts. Need a mover and second. Deborah and Peter. All those in favor? That is carried. Dylan. Forestry update, Judy.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So, the information included in this report, I asked Debbie Green, the forestry supervisor, to put together a summary. I think throughout the year, you've heard about the different pieces that we have done. And also we did receive the final ecological survey report, so we wanted to include that for the board's information. It's, as you know, it's the report that we do that we use when we do the prescriptions and the harvesting in our forest tracts. So we like to do 4 or 5 copies a year that work into the operating plan. So the information's all there for you to review. It's really just to give you an update on the activity that has occurred for 2025.
Okay, any questions? Being none, read the motion. That the LPRCA Board of Directors receive the 2025 forestry update report as information. Moved by Jim, second by Shelley. All those in favor? That's carried. Victoria Dam EA implementation design consultant service. That's well on.
Thank you, Chair. To share, the staff have prepared a report regarding the Victoria Dam implementation design of services. You have the report, and the staff now is looking for the board direction to intelligent process research associates provided to undertake the implementation design at a cost of $114,021 plus $9,620 for contingency, for a total of $123.64, $641 excluding ASST. I'd be happy to answer the question. Thank you.
Good question. Tremendous. Being none, I'll read the motion. That the LPRCA Board of Directors approve retaining Geoprocess Research Associates Inc. to undertake the Victoria Dam environmental assessment implementation design at a cost of $114,021 excluding HST plus $9,620 for contingency items, but the total upside is $123,641. Moved by Tom, seconded. Martin. All those in favor? That is carried. Sorry, Chris.
Mr. Chairman, I know we went through the capital budget for the full town. It seems we have repairs to the bridge that needs to be repaired the day in Maria for 2027. You want to make want to talk to our engineering department, sure we can do some things together that, they're fixing the bridge over the dam, let's do it together.
To the chair, yes. Well, and that, advice, what do they?
Okay, we're done with that one, we're gonna move on to the Ontario regulations and 41-4 regulation mapping update, Leah.
So on page 189 of your agenda package, bringing forth a report to discuss the comprehensive update to our regulation mapping that we have been working on since 2020. So LKRCA staff brought forward at the September 2025 meeting for to initiate public consultation on proposed draft mapping for Ontario Regulation 4124. Since September, staff have completed consultation on the new regulation. Include it hosting the Public Information Center that was held October 6th at the office here in Tillsonburg. The notice of public consultation was published in the Norfolk and Tillsonburg News from September 25th to October 1st of this year. So there's an error in my report that said it was of 2026. So ignore that, 2025. Notice that this PIC was also sent to member municipalities and various other organizations, and I promoted it through LKRC social media. Also, a web page was created on our website dedicated to providing an interactive map where residents can easily go on, type in their 911 address, pull up their property and see the different. But it's currently regulated and it is supposed to be regulated. So they can physically look at it, see what the lines, whether or not they've changed or not. And also an online feedback form was created, which allowed stakeholders to submit comments to staff. So we have done all of that, and staff have responded to a number of inquiries about the mapping, have made further adjustments to the mapping to reflect on-site hazards. So the regulation mapping does need to be updated annually as required by new legislation to ensure the mapping reflects the most current study and data that we have. And this evening, we are asking for approval of regulation mapping and that staff be directed to post the mapping on the authority's website and distribute to member municipalities for the information next year. And also to take annual updates in accordance with Ontario Regulation 4124.
Any question? No question? Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Leanne, when you send these out to member municipalities, do they go to the various planning departments then, or where do they end up?
Through the chair, we'll send it generally, most municipalities have a GIS department. So we'll send it to the GIS department, we'll also notify the planning department. Information's available and the GIS department is usually distribute that information and updates on that.
Good. Sorry, you're not, okay, sorry. Good.
If thank you, Mr. Chairman, I thought one of the biggest rule changes was that the regulated area dropped from 120 down to 30 meters. But I know it's like the regulated area got bigger. Like when you have these public meetings, it doesn't give people a chance to look at the entirety of the watershed and look for anomalies, just temperature, look at those.
Correct. Yeah, so through the chair, that was part of the update. So we had started working on day prior to the changes. It hasn't been touched since 2006. So from that time, we will come studies, shoreline studies, and also we shared better information that was achieved through province, so library, remote sensing information, which is able to kind of give us better information when it comes to ravines and topography. So there's at least 2 staff members, like I went watershed through upstream, downstream, checking everything. So is there an error in it potentially? But it is. It's been looked at through people. And also, yes, there's area that did increase and it depends on what the mapping says. So without an example, so you have a wetland now where the old regulated area was 120, so that's decreased to 30. But if there is new wetlands that have been identified, since the mapping was originally completed, there's going to show more area as the shoreline and Houghton continues to erode. That regulated area is going to move further north. So yes, there are changes throughout the watershed, and just that wetland was only one.
That's one component of all.
Very much. Any other questions?
So, in some of the mapping, and it's been a while since we've done some of it. Were there also changes made to the expected flood levels, like the 100-year flood level and that sort of thing, which may also contribute to a greater area being under regulation?
Yeah, so through the chair, we needed. There was the work that Wood Environmental Division pointing to a variety of water courses. And also Oxford Beach did some work from Tilsonburg down to Vienna, and then we also had the Norfolk and Haldeman shoreline redone. So they look and adjust all the flood levels based on current information and the topography and the land use. So yes, that increased based on those studies.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, move the motions. Okay, there's a few here now. That the LPRC Board of Directors approve the final draft regulation mapping for administering Ontario Regulation 4024. And the staff be directed to post the final mapping on the authority's website and distribute to member municipalities for their information and use. And that staff be directed to complete annual updates to the mapping in accordance with Ontario Regulation 41-24. That's it. Mover. Here, Deborah, all in favor? That's carried. Okay. Backus architectural and structural building assessment reports, Julie. Sorry, Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to remind of my conflict with this item, I just want to check with the clerk if I'm allowed to remain in the room or do I need to know?
As far as I'm aware, you're allowed to remain in the room, you just can't
Participate.
participate or vote.
Okay, Gene.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at the budget meeting, we did have a project, we did a capital project to address some of the issues that were raised out of the report. So I included the report so it can get in front of the board in totality. And then we also have to provide the information to the Backus Museum Committee so that they're aware of the work that was done. And then if the budget passes, we're proposing to demolish 5 structures and buildings. And we had money put in the budget for that, and we also had put money in the budget to do a engineering report on the grist mill, on the Backus mill, so that we can get some costing and some ideas of what the structural issues are, so that we can potentially secure grants with the information. We need to know what's wrong, how much we need, so we can apply for grants. So anyway, this is a lot of information. I thought a very good job highlighting the different things with the bill, bringing it to the forefront. We have done some work in Historic Village. I mean, this past year, it was in the budget. We put a new roof on the Cherry Hill School. With that, we eliminated the chimney because there's a lot of issues with the chimney for the wood stove. So we eliminated the wood stove. So now we put in some basic baseboard heating for the school classes that are occurring actually this time of year. We've dealt with some hazard trees. We did deal with some of the downspout, things that were raised here for Aunt Erie's, structure in the homestead. We were having some issues with, drainage and washouts in that area. And I'm talking, this is all done either by a contractor, but a lot of work done by workshop staff. You put in some big old drainage, it seems to be working. We're working in the homestead right now, fixing up the back room, which we discovered had a water leak, which wasn't apparent to staff. So then we ripped out the cupboards and the sink in the back room. It had been leaking when the water system's been on, so we dealt with some mold issues there, which maybe was contributing to some of the mold issues we had in the homestead, so that was really good to discover and get that dealt with. We always spray for the carpenter bees there every year. We've installed a new gate at the north entrance, and we completely cleaned out the homestead basement, which just needed to be cleaned out where the water system is. So we are doing work. Obviously, there's a lot more work to do. But I just wanted to get this report in front of the board so you can see the full picture. It's just awkward with the timing with the budgeting factors, but here we are. So we are having to have to deal with some of the issues from a public safety and staff safety issues. So.
Good. Questions or anything? Are you gonna run this by the Bacchus Museum Committee first? And then we got a motion here, just information, but before the buildings are demolished. Budget.
It was in the budget, and we will be presenting a report to the Bacchus Museum Committee.
And what will happen with the artifacts that are under the roofs of these buildings? They're stored in there.
They will have to be dealt with. Obviously, they will have, because they're part of the collection, so there's a process. Either we take, like, there would be a process to deal with the artifacts. Possibly, there might be some way to piece out the different pieces of the church. I think there's some interest from a historical standpoint, where people are interested in different pieces, the pews, the windows, etc. I haven't really had a chance to really explore how, some of the things are very small in there. But maybe with the church, there's some value on piecing out, but I need to do a little more research on that.
Good.
Thank you, Chairman. Some of those structures aren't historic structures, they're roofs to protect the artifact underneath. Gonna be my question, like, are we gonna tear them down, but then build a new roof over it, or like the saw and the cider press and stuff like that? If it's gonna get rid of the artifact itself along with the building, or are you just gonna like the building with something that's very simple, big roof on the wall?
When we're taking it, I'm going to eliminate the display.
And how much extra is in that book? From everything I read in this report, a lot of them we're behind in the maintenance on it, like that. It's not behind and stuff like that. And how busy our normal staff, like, do we have to get extra help this summer and try to get caught up on some of this? Because usually it's cheaper to maintain something than it is to have to rebuild it. Right? If we're behind on it, we have to put a little extra in the budget to hire an extra maintenance guy for the summer to fix the heater troughs and dig out a little bit and get the drainage proper and all that. Have you got that covered in the budget?
We have some of it covered, or we'll have to do a complete review, but we do have somebody in that we do. That's how we continue to do some work. It's in the building and equipment repair, Heritage Village. So a lot of the things like you're seeing with drainage, but yeah, I'll definitely have to look at that, and evaluate that with the other projects for the workshop, and then maybe we might need to subcontractor. We want to advance it quickly.
Thank you.
Shelley.
Thank you, through the chair, just was curious with the demolition of some of these buildings, would you open up more room for camping or is this? There's not much room there, I'm just trying to
Yeah.
envision where these buildings are, sorry, I've only been there a few times.
Yeah, so that, the only thing that's close to one of the campgrounds really is this is a church, and it's on the road up to the one campground, which I don't envision we would open it up for camping. But possibly. Yeah, I'm not sure. Doesn't make sense. It's not large areas, so.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Judy? Motion. For the LBRCA, the Board of Directors receives the Architectural and Structural Building Assessment Report as information. Moved by Robert, seconded by Jim. All in favor? That is good. Well, Scott mentioned this, and I don't know if it's in language, but it's the sluice and the gate, the meeting, something to each of the 30 in that band. And it's not gonna be, I'm looking at it, this is the property that expensive, but yeah, long term, it's. You gotta know the way reducing the sediment behind the bank, number one. And if you ever need to lower the water for whatever reason, you can tell that's what it's for. Something needs to consider. Anyway, that's one of the points, a big issue of this. Okay. Hey, thank you. Okay, next meeting in January. No, we're talking short, I'm next.
Perfect. Yeah.
When the best place. Sure. December 11th, everyone shows up for them. Okay. And their next regular meeting is January 7th. It's for the hearing, it's got a multiple agenda. And then.
Sure, you don't need a motion for that, you can adjourn.
Oh, okay, well, Jenny, thank you. Good, John.